Welcome into another episode of George in the Jungle. I am Aaron Smith with George Vogel on our weekly little show here where we talk all things Cincinnati sports, the Bengals, the Bearcats, the Reds, little FC, little high school football. But without further ado, George, how are we doing tonight?
Aaron, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I wore my FC t-shirt.
That's
I
nice.
have my FC hat on. I'm pretending to be a soccer fan.
Well, you look like a good one tonight.
I don't have the
winning team, baby.
I don't have the scarf or whatever they call them.
Yeah. I don't know. I call it scarf too. I've got one somewhere. When I was at work, I probably got 2 or 3 of those sent to me. They're pretty nice, but to the loyal season ticket holders in the newsroom, I usually gave it up for them. But I have one of them here somewhere. And I have a jersey, and I have a polo shirt, a t-shirt. I don't know if I have a hat. I should have a. Oh, yeah, I got a knit cap. Usually,
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully I can bust that out for one of these playoff games coming up because they were just dominant the other night. So I think they're going to just roar right into those semifinals and then take it to the conference final and then to the MLS Cup, all at TQL Stadium. But we'll get to some of that maybe. What's on your mind tonight? NFL football? Bearcat
I think
football?
we got to start. No, I think we got to start with the Cincinnati Bengals for sure, as they're all the way back.
They sure look like it.
They are all the way back.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to put – just like you don't put too much stock in a bad performance, because you don't want to go overboard on that. You try not to go overboard on how good they looked, but they played a good team on the road, out west, and San Francisco's suffering a little bit right now. There's no doubt about it. That's 3 straight losses for them after starting 5-0. But there's very little negative you can say about what the Bengals did out there on that field. There's a couple of things that we'll get to, but that's nitpicking at this point. To see Joe Burrow operate the way he did, the Bengals with a comfortable 31-17 win out there, now 4-3. Without question, they are the best last place team in the NFL right now because technically they are in last place in the AFC North. But I saw a thing today where the Bengals, their Super Bowl odds are still like plus 1,600 or something. And I think I might want a piece of that. I think I definitely want a piece of, if it stays under 3 against the Bills at home Sunday night, I think I want a piece of that. What I saw Sunday was nothing short of impressive. And Joe Burrow had what may be the best game of his career. Certainly by far and away the best game this season. He's healthy. He's healthy and he's comfortable and he's moving in the pocket like we were used to him moving in the pocket. Feels pressure, has that uncanny knack to avoid sacks and get out of there. And not only get out of there, but still look downfield and make plays. What can you say? The dude was 28 of 32, 3 touchdowns. At one point had the last 19 passes in the first half, all completions. I mean, that's a solid game by anybody.
Yeah. The one play that he rolled out of 2 sack opportunities, one by Armstead, one by Bosa, and then scrambles out to get that first down, just dot right to T. Higgins. Just unbelievable. That was when you knew, right?
Play. That was 3rd and 10. So if you're the Niners, you knew that he would see that play developing, you're like, all right, we're going to get the ball back, right? That's when they on steroids.
That's when they decide they're going out and getting Chase Young, right?
Yeah.
That play makes them go out.
They needed him on the other side, I guess, because first of all, just for him to escape and get out of it. And then to throw that dart to T, and T was funny about it because he's like, God, I thought he was sacked. Then I thought he was sacked again. And then I see him escape, and I'm like, oh, SH, I gotta try to get open, which he did, and I mean that was just a tremendous play on both ends, but certainly the greater end of that play was Joe Burrow and what he did. Uh, that's got to frustrate the heck out of a defense when you've got him trapped like that. And not only does he get out of it, he still can find a man downfield. And I'll tell you, the Bengals with those three receivers working the way they do, Tyler Boyd was so big early in that game. I know I saw on him every week how much I like that kid's game. And I hope there's a way to keep him around because I just love his attitude and the way he stuck through this whole thing when it was going off the rails. And he kind of kept the locker room going. And then Joe Burrow comes along and Chase comes along and, he's kind of taking a back seat. But that hasn't stopped him from being a leader, stepping up when they need him. And early in that game, he was huge. He was huge. And kudos to Burrow, too, spreading that ball around the way he did. They're a tough out when they play like that, and that's the way they played last year when they got on that roll. And here we are, a couple of weeks ago, you're thinking, this is like, and I don't feel there's any way they can reel off 10 in a row. Boy, they go out and play like that, and it's like they can do just about anything. Is how you feel right
Sure.
now.
You bring up them spreading the ball around. I really liked what they did when they brought in Trent Irwin. When it seemed like they started to bottle up some of the other guys, all of a sudden you bring in Trent Irwin and you're moving the sticks again in just a little bit that he was in there making some plays. Irv Smith Jr., even after the fumble in the red zone, Joe continues to go out and find him to continue moving the chains in the second half. And that's just character. It just shows so much maturity in Joe Burrow, I guess, because I don't know that if it was me that I would have gone back at Irv Smith after you fumble it right there in the red zone like that. Spreading it to Yoshi for a touchdown, the only reception he has on the day for 2 yards there.
And a good play by him, by the way, where he ran that and saw what was going on and then comes back towards the front of the end zone to the quarterback and gave Joe someone to throw to. It was impressive, and that's what you got to do. Keep a play alive, man.
The 23 yards that Mixon had takes him over 100 on the day with his rushing yards. Then Jamar Chase, of course, gets his 10 for 10 and ends up with 100 yards on the day. Another touchdown for him. T. Higgins made some – I felt like it was the first game that T. Higgins really felt almost back. I still didn't feel like he was all the way back, but almost back. But just
he was a pretty good part of things, and I felt like he was making plays and he was getting open, and I felt like he was much more part of the game this week than he's been.
I'm putting him somewhere around that 85% mark from just the eye test. But like you said, spreading the ball around, that was definitely a point I wanted to get to and how he did it.
Yeah, and Joe's got his mobility back, and on top of that, the offensive line played pretty darn well. I mean, honestly, it wasn't perfect. However, right now you've got those guys all kind of hitting on their cylinders. All 5 of them, the starters played really the whole game. And they, they run the ball well. And you brought up the Irv Smith thing, and that's something I was going to get to that rankled the hell out of me. And I know the Bengals have struggled running the ball in short yardage situations, but it's 1st and goal at the 3. Why in the heck are we doing a shovel pass to a tight end when Joe Mixon was running the way he was? I would have pounded that thing up in there the way that offensive line was going. There's no way I'm risking something like that. And should Irv have held it? Yeah, sure. He should have had it, and that shouldn't have happened, and you don't fumble the ball in that situation. But at the same time, maybe don't ask him to do that when you really haven't asked him to do that yet this year, and it's 1st and goal at the 3.
I think the announcers had said at that point in the season he had 7 catches prior to that. So yeah, he hasn't been asked to do much of anything at that point in time in regards to catching and running with the ball. But yeah, I yelled at the same thing at my TV. What the hell are we passing it for? First, you're 3 yards from pay dirt. just
everybody in the
pounded
bar
in.
that I was at. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Especially the way they were running the football and the way Joe Mixon was. It honestly, that looked like the first time this year I would have trusted them in short yardage situations running the ball the way they seemed like they were. The offensive line was getting off the ball and Joe was pounding it up in there. And he's been doing that he's been running hard all year. It seems like there's none of this jittering around in the backfield or monkeying around with the football. He's just pounding it right where he wants to pound it, and it's working. I think he's looked terrific.
I agree.
And I wasn't sure that they should find a way to bring him back this year. I mean, I'll go ahead and say that I was fine with them moving on, but now I'm glad they didn't with the way he's been running the football. And I just very pleased with that part of it. And we'll get to this in a minute, but we wish they would have found somebody else that can do that too, to help out with that trade deadline passing. But before we get to that and the disappointments there, I think you have to talk defensively how the Bengals played too. And once again, in the red zone, I mean, that Jermaine Pratt interception was out of this world. And I don't know how he didn't stay in bounds. He was just off balance a little or something. He may have gone the distance with that thing. I think Brock Purdy was the only thing that was in his way. But that was just a great play. I couldn't believe he caught it. Because for a second, I'm like, where'd the ball go? And then he's running with it. It's like, how'd he do that? I mean, that was amazing, and while the Bengals didn't turn that into points immediately, it did keep San Francisco from getting points on the board. Sure. And then Logan Wilson had his interception down at the other end, and that did set up a score for the Bengals. So the defense, a couple of sacks, 7 quarterback hits in all. And again, they allow some yards, but when push comes to shove and they need some big plays to keep things cooking, they make them. I mean, they just do.
Yeah, San Francisco, we talked about it last week. They had lost the game. You didn't think it was possible they were going to lose 2 in a row, but here we are. The Lou Anarumo dialed up a great defense against a team that is capable of putting a ton of points on the board. I don't care if Trent Williams isn't in the game. I don't care if Debo isn't in the game. They still have weapons. Ayuk looked good out there. He had a couple plays where I'm like, why is he that wide open? He's, of course, busting up what looked like, at least to me, looked like some zone coverage. Christian McCaffrey's always a threat. Right. And this team got after Brock Purdy, plain and simple. They made him come back to earth a little bit more. If last week wasn't enough, this week was another, just reining him back in, making him look a little bit more like Mr. Relevant as opposed to an MVP candidate.
Right.
But they still have been good. They've been finding ways. Shanahan is a magician with his quarterbacks. It doesn't seem to matter who's in and who's not, in just the ways that he exploits a defense. Lou Anarumo, however, I think is a master magician, which is a step above being just a regular magician. So.
Yeah. I think he's proven that the last 3 years with what he's done with this defense and their ability to just come up with the plays and the stops that matter the most. He's got that defense in a good spot mentally, physically, across the board. I mean, the dude knows what he's doing, and he knows how to use the guys that he has and put them in the best positions to be successful. And all of that was definitely impressive. And we'll see, if they build on that at home. I feel really good about it. I feel good about what I saw. They get out of there healthy. You can blame me for George Kittle coming alive, though, because I've been kind of a fan of his, but he's dropped off a little bit. You don't see it. It's like, plus I had him on a fantasy team, I think, last year. It's like, dude, you ever going to do anything? So they show a shot of him on the bench. They show a shot of him, and he hadn't done squat, right? I go, there's the invisible man. They're like, why do you? I go, because the guy, he looked all world for a couple years there. Now you never see him do anything anymore. And then the minute I said that, Kittle, it's like if they would have found a way to come back and make that a lot closer at the end, I was going to feel really bad about ripping on that dude. when they took that shot at him, because the minute, and I'm a jinx like that, I am a jinx like that. The minute I open my mouth and say something like that, I eat every word I just spewed out, and I did Sunday with him.
Big plays, like you had said, from the linebackers, Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. What a move from this front office to make sure that they signed up both of these dudes for several years. Now we're solid at linebacker, and they seems like they finally are starting to value that linebacker position now that they found some guys via the draft that they didn't want to lose.
Yeah. And you know, with those guys behind a defensive line that does what it does, you know, with BJ Hill and Reeder in there, thank goodness Hendrickson was fine with that ankle when his foot got stepped on. Because that was weird. I see that play happening, and the first slow-mo, I'm like, what in the world happened? Then they showed that guy, I think it was a 49er stepped on his foot.
It was, yeah.
But when you saw it, I'm like, okay, it didn't roll all the way. I think this dude's going to be okay, because he's been such a tremendous asset.
He's a wrecking ball.
They're, you know, their front 6 or 7, whatever you want to call it, they're darn good. And to me, it starts up front there. I mean, if you have really awful DBs, and we're going to get to some of that later when it comes to college football, they're going to get exploited. I don't care what you have up front. But the Bengals DBs are not horrible. In fact, their corners are playing well. Mike Hilton, again, making some big plays and coming through, stopping the run on that one.
Should have been an interception.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we talked about Cam Taylor-Britt last week or the week before about how he's emerging, and it looks like he's okay too. He came up hobbling once, but he was back in there. It's, you know, I still don't know completely, and Dax Hill had the pick, but I don't know completely about the safeties, if they're as solid as what they had before. That's a tough ask, you know, when you had the 2 guys they had, but they're getting the job done, and they're fitting in with this defense and allow them to play as well as they've played the past couple of years when they made the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's the team doesn't have a whole lot of glaring weaknesses right now. Today was the day. If you were going to make a move, today was the deadline to make any of those trades. The Niners, as we had alluded to earlier, they did make a move trading for Chase Young. A 3rd-round pick goes for Chase Young. I think the thing that frustrates me as a fan more than anything with that pick is the fact that this comes courtesy of Adam Schefter. If Chase Young leaves in free agency for a big contract, the 49ers could potentially recoup that 3rd-round compensatory pick in the form of another compensatory pick. So essentially, it becomes a wash.
Right.
Granted, the compensatory pick
wash, right?
The compensatory pick would be later in the round than what you would have had. But if you're going as deep into the playoffs as you're assuming you're going to, it's not that much of a difference. So if you're trading that 3rd-round pick, I understand how much the Bengals value picks. I really do. But if you're not going to bring the guy back, and because you can't afford to, you don't have that connection with him, you don't care, or you simply just don't want to pay a guy at that position, whatever the case may be, 3rd-round pick for getting a 3rd-round pick because you're going to let him go. Somebody's going to sign him for a compensatory pick. Is it that much of a big deal?
No, that's a wise move by the Niners in my book. And I get it, you know, the high picks, all picks have value, but my God, when you know what you're getting in return and you know what your team's weakness is, and if you have a chance to up your team at the expense of that pick, why not do it? You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying trade all your picks like some of these teams have done in the past, but if you have a chance to pick up a position of need where you have a chance to go deep in the playoffs, and you do it for a 3rd or 4th-round pick, or, you know, there were 6th-round picks going today for guys that are, you know, capable players, you do it. You just do it. You don't know what the heck you're going to get with that pick, but I know what I'm getting when I'm getting a veteran or a guy that's shown what he can or cannot do in the league. But I'm guessing there just wasn't a fit for the Bengals. But of course, they haven't done anything like that in forever. Right. To trade a pick for a player during the season at the deadline. It just doesn't happen here. And I still think this bunch today is a little different. I try not to judge them on that or let that influence my thinking there. But they didn't do anything. So obviously there was nothing there for the liking. But I do think, another running back would have been nice, and certainly another tight end.
Yeah, especially when you have rumors flying around about interesting guys like Hunter Henry, interesting guys like bringing back Hayden Hurst. I don't know. I guess I can understand not bringing Hunter Henry in. He's got quite a bit of a contract up in New England. Hayden Hurst as well has next year, especially quite a bit of a contract there. But had you made the move prior to, I believe, yesterday, you could have also renegotiated the contract. So there, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know what Hayden Hurst would be thinking, or if he would want to redo that to come back here. Seemed like he had a good time playing here. So,
see, this is why you have to be more active on Twitter. Things like his mom liking a post by one of the super fans that happened when he was discussing, wanting to bring back Hayden Hurst and the things that he would, the lengths he would go to if Hayden Hurst did come back. And Hayden Hurst's mother actually liked that.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I just don't have. I'm retired and I've got all day, but I don't have time to sit on Twitter all day.
I know you don't even repost this show, George.
I did a couple of weeks ago. I will tonight.
All right. Well, I'll believe it when I see it.
God, ye of little faith. But I do have a track record.
Even after the win, though, the Bengals are still actually in the basement of the AFC North, which is absolutely insane. Sitting at 4-3 and in the basement. The Ravens still leading the way as they now sit at 6-2. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati all at 4-3.
But the Bengals 0-2 in the division, 0-2.
Yeah.
Or whatever, 0-3 in the AFC, which, a little bit of a concern when it comes to tiebreaker time, and hopefully that doesn't matter. But a lot of room to go. But you know how these things come down to that. Too bad they don't play in the NFC West. They'd be 4-0 in the division and have a chance at all four of them again. That's weird. That is so strange that's how that's played out. But that's where we're at. But, the Bengals, I think, based on what we saw, I'm not overly concerned that they're going to be in that hunt and they're going to be back there knocking on the door come playoff time and AFC championship time. They look like a team that's ready to go now.
Well, you bring up AFC championship, and you do have one of the favorites for the AFC championship coming into town on Sunday as Buffalo comes back. The last time, of course, they were here being the whole Damar Hamlin debacle.
Yeah, crazy.
Cincinnati right now is favored 2.5. The over-under is somehow only at 48.5. I don't know that that's even a fair number for this game. I think it'll probably splash louder than that. That said, ESPN's FPI gives the Buffalo Bills nearly a 67% chance to win this game.
I don't buy that.
No, not after the way they played last week.
Not in Cincinnati. I don't know if they're figuring in all that primetime stuff and the horrible history there and things of that nature. But I'll take, first of all, I'll give that 2.5 right now. If
Did I tell my
half, I'm on it.
Did I tell the joke of the week I heard last week on this show, or was it somewhere else?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, George.
Yeah.
Did you know that Taylor Swift has shown up at more NFL games this year than Josh Allen?
That's that's one I wouldn't have bet on before the season. I'll tell you that right now. I will
He's
tell
been
you
very
that.
hit or miss.
But yeah, what they're 5-3, the Bills.
Yes, sitting at 5-3.
Yeah, and you know they got that win Thursday night at Tampa Bay. Showed a little up tempo, showed a little no huddle. I'm sure they're
Leonard Fournette.
going to do that. I'm sure they're going to try to do that again with the Bengals because they had some success with it. But the thing about the Bills, they've lost 2 or 3 key starters on defense, and they made a deal today, right? Didn't they make a deal for a corner with the Packers? I think. If I remember.
I'm not.
My nuts.
I don't know off the top of my head in that regard. I know they did sign Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, they did that too. I thought they made a deal with the Packers. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I thought they got a corner because, you know, their safety's out. They lost a corner earlier. Their linebackers out. They're kind of beat up defensively. And I think the Bengals, with the way they've been churning on offense here, or at least they did Sunday, can take advantage of that.
They brought in
8 points is going to be in trouble on that game too.
They brought in Rasul Douglas for a 5th-round pick.
So he's a quarter, right? From the back.
They got Rasul Douglas and a 5th-round pick in exchange for a 3rd-round pick from Green Bay.
Yeah. So, you know, to the Bills' credit, they went out and got some help where they needed. But they lost some really good players on that defense. And that's all teams have injuries, but that's just a tough one for them to take. And we'll see if the Bengals can take advantage of that. Yeah, they do have the emotional thing with the whole Damar Hamlin thing. He played earlier in the month he played against the Dolphins, but he hasn't played. He's been inactive the past couple of weeks. But he'll be here, I'm sure. And, you know, hopefully he comes out and, you know, the fans can give him his due and we all make amends and everything works out and they can play a hell of a game of football on Sunday night.
Yeah, it is the first ever stripe the bowl or stripe the jungle.
Yeah,
they're attempting to have the sections striped off, so you're supposed to wear black or orange according to where your seats are. So be on the lookout for that if you are going to be attending the game. But should be a fun one. I know just from talking to everyone who was at the last Bengals-Bills game, and I can only imagine that they're going to try and replicate that same energy. But everybody who was there the last time said it was the loudest they'd ever heard that stadium ever. I think it was a Monday night one for that.
Yes, it was.
And it was
came out looking pretty darn good too.
Yeah.
Got down the field offensively. But, you know, the Bills, you still got Josh Allen. You never know. You know, when he's on, Stephon Diggs is a thorn in everybody's side. I mean, that guy, it just doesn't matter where he's playing and who's throwing to him. He's always going to get his. James Cook, the running back's coming into his own. They got a pretty good tight end. So there's still some stuff there offensively where they can cause you problems. So, yeah, if Vegas says 2.5, they're expecting the tight one. I think it'll be a great game. But, my God, the way the Bengals look Sunday, I want to give that 2.5. I'm thinking I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir, I guess, led them in yards last week. He came out of nowhere. Gabe Davis has been a problem there as well the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid was a tight end that the Bengals could have had they not drafted Myles Murphy, but they made the decision to go after a defensive end rather than a tight end. And Dalton Kincaid
he's having a pretty darn good rookie year, right?
He's looked pretty good, and that should continue to trend up as their other tight end is Dawson Knox is done for the year, I believe. So
right, yeah, they've
I don't know.
Lost some players, but we'll see. It's going to be fun Sunday night. I can't wait to see the stadium. If they actually pull that off, that'll be pretty cool.
I agree, especially when they do the aerial shot as they are one to do on night games, especially in
I'll tell you
Cincinnati.
what,
So,
NBC with that Sunday night football, and this isn't just a WLWT alum talking. They do that thing right. Uh, they roll in the trucks and the production. And I know Chris takes his share of grief from Cincinnati fans because they always think he's kind of not, completely on board with the Bengals. I think he's as good as we've ever had being an analyst on football, and the stuff that he picks out and he's right about. His preparation is second to none. I've seen it. I've heard about it. That dude cares about what he's doing. And he goes into those games knowing every little thing you could possibly know about both teams. So I love that Sunday night production and what they do. If I had one complaint, and I have this complaint about every game, big game there is there's just too much flash at the beginning with the intro and the song and all that crap. Just get to the coin flip and let's go.
now here's a guy.
That's right. John Madden.
I'm on carpet. So,
I put Chris and him as the top two all time.
no, Chris is the one who always drops the. Now here's a guy.
Well, that's what Madden used to do too.
Did he? I didn't know that Madden. Maybe that's where he got it from. I don't know. I couldn't really do the chair slide in because I'm on carpet here, but
Yeah, he just doesn't do the booms and the pals and the Madden. And I know a lot of people thought he always stated the obvious, and a lot of times he did, like, look at that guy with the mud flying up in the back and the big paws. And I mean, it just was something else. But John Madden, to have a game named after you like that, the NFL game, and it's still going strong, he was something else. Something else.
So speaking of something else, there was something else that happened this past weekend, and that was a Bearcats football game. Believe it or not, it is now the sixth straight loss, the longest losing streak since 1998. Again, under the only guest we've ever had on this show, under Coach Minter.
He's been coming up a lot lately. The Michigan scandal that's going on right now.
None of it coming up roses.
He'll never be on a show with us again.
But the Cincinnati did fall. This time was just it was in the rain, and Oklahoma State has a giant homecoming. They call it the world's greatest homecoming, I believe, world's greatest, maybe. 130,000 people go to Stillwater to hang out for homecoming, and 10-7 at halftime.
Get in, something like that.
Yeah, 10-7 at halftime. Oklahoma State's up. Cincinnati feels maybe like they had a chance, and all of a sudden, I believe it was before halfway through the third quarter, I think it was 9 minutes and some change before Oklahoma State had put up its second touchdown in roughly as many minutes, and that was where the wheels came off.
Well, yeah, when you're down 10-7 at the half, you should have a chance, and you should be ready to come out and stick your nose in there and try to win that ball game. But they got waylaid in that second half. And I'll tell you, the obvious thing to start is what was said today and what happened Saturday, the quarterback change. I mean, I'm not saying that's the be-all, end-all, but you got to do it. You got to do it. And here's why you got to do it, in my estimation. I don't see any respect for that UC passing game, none whatsoever, from these opposing defenses. UC is able to run the ball, and they've run the ball very well. But when you're 3rd and 14 and you're handing off to the running back, this is in the first half, mind you, still a ball game. You're content to hand off. You're 3rd and 19. You're content to hand off. You're 3rd and 12, and your quarterback runs it and fumbles. That's a problem. It's a problem that the coaches don't have a lot of faith in that passing game, that you're going to create something to get a first down and keep a drive alive. And then the results of it all.
You had one play left at the end of the first half, and you ran the ball instead of passing it.
Yes, I would have passed it to the end zone, or however close you could have gotten from where they were on the field, or I would have just knelt on the damn thing. You saw what happened. Somebody gets hurt, right? Miles Montgomery takes a shot, and he can't play the rest of the game. And sounds like he'll play this week. Sounds like Kiner will play this week. Sounds like Ryan Montgomery is going to be back enough to help this week, so they won't be handing off to the redshirt walk-on. God bless his heart. Thank God he was there. But I just don't see, and they run well, but sometimes you get behind the chains and you got to pass. You got to be able to throw it. He threw 16 times in a game where you lose 45-13, and it's probably not all his fault. I don't know that the receivers are getting separation. They may not be, and that could be half the problem. That could be more than half the problem. But all I know is there's a lack of respect for that passing game, and there's certainly a lack of confidence in that passing game from the UC stance. So I think when you get to that point, it's time to make the change. And if you think that what's coming is going to be worse, then, yeah, you don't make the change, because you do still owe it to the kids that have been around the program, that are the last year players, to try to win. You got to try to win the games, whatever's left on the schedule, whatever little bit of daylight there is. You got to go for it and give it your best shot. All that being said, I just don't think running, and I know it was wet and an ugly night and it's cold and you don't want to risk a turnover, but my God, when you're doing it on every third down that has any length to it at all and you're afraid to throw the football, then what are you doing out there? You're not trying to win the damn game.
Excuses can be made that it was rainy and wet and cold. Sure. It didn't stop Oklahoma State and Alan Bowman from throwing it 34 times, completing 17, which for those not quick at math, that's half, for 286 yards, 2 touchdowns. Granted, he did turn it over, but they also put themselves in a position to keep you honest. You couldn't just load the box because they were also throwing the ball.
Right. And I, and then you come out in the third quarter, you give up a score at 17-7, and then, your quarterback on 1st and 10 throws an interception that ends up back, inside the 30-yard line of UC's and sets up another touchdown. And with the way your offense is performing in that game and all the other conditions we talked about, that's pretty much game, set, and match. When you went down 24-7 or whatever it was game over at that point. And that shouldn't be the way it is in college football. You have to be able to move the ball some in the air in today's game. And I love their running game. I mean, how can you not? But I also like winning. And I think you've got to have a viable passing game in today's game to have a chance of winning. And right now, I just do not see that with the Bearcats. I don't see it at all. And I think some of that wears on the defense a little bit. And you come out and, you give up that touchdown, then you turn it over, you're back on the field and your back's up against the red zone, and you give up another one at that point. You shouldn't give up, but certainly your psyche is a lot worse than it was when you came out of that locker room for the second half.
Defense has been really good against the run this season. They were a top 10 team against the run coming into this game. And after this game, I believe they dropped under 40. They're worse than 40th in the country now. Just Ollie Gordon, the second, 25 carries, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns. The team finishes with 315 yards. This was supposed to be maybe the best defensive line in the Big 12, and they have not been what I would call the best defensive line in the Big 12. When you struggle to sack the quarterback, when you And of course, some of that can be brought on by poor coverage play, poor linebacker play, call it what you will. Depends on where you want to be nitpicky at that point in time, I guess. But no sacks in this game against Alan Bowman. It's tough sledding.
Yeah, if you're bringing four guys and you're not blitzing a lot, and they don't because they've got to help those DBs, and I think that's where they're getting stuck in these games. They feel like they have to help these guys, and they kind of do. And it's like anytime they brought pressure before, like the BYU game, they got their butts burned. So you don't bring the pressure, and you're hoping these guys get there, and they got to get there sometimes. If these guys are that good, they got to get home and get a sack here and there. And it seems like every time they're getting pressure, there's some kind of contained loss. The quarterback will take off on a run. It's been bad. They give up 60 yards to Gordon in the first half, which was good. I'll take that all day long. That second half, it was an absolute disaster. They let him get going. There was a couple probably underlying reasons for that, but that 9-yard touchdown run he had, especially, and that's the one that made it 24-7, I believe. That one bugged me more than any run in that game, more than that 75-yard run or whatever he had against the second-team defense. That one bugged me because there were like 3 missed tackles on that play. You're at the 9-yard line. It may have been first and goal at the 9. And this guy gets it, and you got a guy on him. Nope, he spins out of that. Another guy's got a shot with, and then he goes into the end zone. I mean, that was bad. And I'm sorry. I know there was a stat earlier this year about missed tackles and where they were and where they were. It seems to me like there's been more key missed tackles this year than I can remember on a Bearcat team for a long time.
Yeah, the Bearcats were able to turn the ball over twice defensively. They forced a fumble and recovered. They forced an interception. And yet, if you go back and try and actually think about this game, remember this game, those plays almost don't even stand out because they weren't able to capitalize on either of those turnovers. They weren't able to turn those turnovers into points. And it just seems almost much of the same. It almost doesn't matter at this point if we're even turning the ball over because it's still offensively ugly.
Yeah, but I will say the lack of sacks and the lack of turnovers has surprised me with this defense, given how this staff coming in and what they lived off of in Louisville, and that probably a bit of a distance in talent. After all, we did see this team get pushed around and what was left of their team, but it was what was left of Louisville too in that bowl game, and that was a joke. So, they did I overestimate the talent on this defense? Probably. Did I think I really thought the front 6 or 7 would be really good? I was worried about the DBs, and now I know why. It's either you give up a completion or you get a flag is what it feels like.
I agree. And I hope somehow, some way they're able to, even still in the remaining games, the 4 remaining games, figure it out to where it's not just so hard to watch.
Yeah, you can't have these games where it snowballs on you and gets away like this one did, to where, no one would ever believe that was a 3-point game at halftime when you see what happened in that second half. And Oklahoma State, to their credit, they're rolling now. That's a team that didn't start off great. They've got it figured out now. They got a big game this week against the Sooners in Stillwater. It's the Sooners
with the championship on the line,
a touchdown. So I think the Cowboys will give them all they want.
They're playing for a championship.
Yeah, absolutely they are. They're right there.
Mm-hmm.
They are right there. They figured it out, got it turned around. I would like UC to make some strides between now and the end of the year, but I also, I think they're going to have to make that change at quarterback, and I think we're going to have to see Lichtenberg a lot this week. and see what he can do against UCF. You know, even though the Knights, they're 0-5 in the conference like UC, but they've shown a bit of a pulse here against some of these teams. You know, if I remember right, I think they played Kansas pretty tough, Oklahoma, and then we saw what happened with West Virginia this week. But at least they were in the game somewhat. It wasn't like it wasn't a complete butt whipping, right?
Kansas was 51-22.
Okay, that was a bad one. Kansas State, maybe? Is that who they played?
Oklahoma State was 31-29. Baylor was the one where they gave it up in the fourth quarter and lost.
Oh, God, I saw that. I turned that game on in the fourth quarter. It's a rout. And I'm like, I'll at least watch and see what, Baylor's got coming in.
Yeah.
And from that point on, when I turned that game on, it went so the other way to Baylor. Well, they scored like 26 or something in the fourth quarter to win that unanswered.
Something absurd.
I was sitting there with my jaw hitting the floor. I did watch the fourth quarter of that.
Oklahoma was the one where they gave it the lead in the third quarter and ended up losing that game. And then West Virginia, 41-28.
What was that game at halftime? I'm trying to remember. I watched some of that Saturday.
It was at halftime.
Just curious. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
17-14 West Virginia.
Yeah, I knew it was a good game there for a while. I was watching it. I just, for whatever reason, don't remember exactly what happened. But we'll see. UC an underdog at home, and I will not be stupid like I was last week, and I would have taken the points. No way. I just don't see a pulse in this team right now, to be honest.
Yeah, UCF right now favored 4.5. Over under is at 59.5, and ESPN's FPI gives UCF 58.8% chance to win that game.
So you're telling me, according to this ESPN thing, which I'm getting the impression is just nothing but a pile of dog you-know-what, the Bearcats have a better chance at winning at home this week than the Bengals, according to that thing.
That's correct.
Can you enlighten me on this?
I can't.
I don't know how they figure that out, but whatever it is, I ain't paying attention to it.
I'm going to guess it's
ridiculous.
I'm going to guess it's some statistician who doesn't actually have any interest in sports, but just simply puts together algorithms.
Right. They're crunching some kind of numbers, but I'm telling you what, they might want to find a new formula. Because if the Bearcats have a better chance of winning at home this week than the Bengals, I mean, come on.
Look, George, they figured out how to make money on bullshit. That's just like a weatherman. You worked with weather people for years.
Oh, Lord, that's a low blow. All I've done for the past 2 weeks is complain about the weather forecast. It's like, it's a crappy day to golf. And then it's like, God, it was a great day to golf. Then it's, hey, it's a great day to golf. No, it's a crappy. That's all I've done is complain about weather reports and meteorologists. I'm just like everybody else now. I'll start calling Kevin Robinson and complaining soon.
One of the regulars. Welcome back to the regular world.
Exactly. Oh, Lord. Oh, the college football playoffs rankings out tonight. Anything strike you? I'll tell you what strikes me.
Yeah, what the hell is Ohio State doing at number 1?
Well, they got a couple good wins.
Do they?
Well, that's counting Notre Dame. That's counting. Come on, there was somebody else in there decent besides Wisconsin.
Indiana?
No.
Penn State?
Yes. They're reputable.
Sure.
And when you compare it to Georgia, I mean, Georgia's non-conference slate. I'm sorry, like UAB, Middle Tennessee or someone.
None of them ever play anybody in the non-con. They don't. Michigan doesn't.
Right now, I think
Georgia doesn't. Alabama doesn't. Yeah.
Either Florida or at Auburn. At Auburn was a good game, and that was probably their toughest. But here's what strikes me. You got 5 undefeated teams, right?
Sure.
Who's at number 5?
Washington, I believe.
Yep. Washington. Who has, out of all those 5 teams, Who has the best win according to the college football playoff rankings? Washington beating Oregon, albeit at Washington. Great game, unbelievable game. But based on their criteria, then they're going to say, well, the last 2 weeks, Washington struggled against lesser teams, but they got the damn win. What matters? Winning. And so they're telling you winning ugly doesn't really matter as much as putting someone away. I get that to a degree, but if you're going to sit there and say Ohio State's above Georgia because Georgia doesn't have as strong a wins as Ohio State and they have 2 top 25 wins or whatever, the best win out of those 5 was Washington over Oregon, and they put Washington 5. Now, who will I put them above? I don't know, but according to their criteria, they shouldn't be 5th. And now, when you look at the teams and you know what they're capable of, you can make an argument that, Georgia's number 1. They're 2-time defending champ. They're missing a couple pieces, but those guys will be back. But their strength of schedule is terrible. Michigan's strength of schedule is terrible. But Washington's sitting at number 5 with the best win out of those 5.
Well,
did they ask that question on the show? Because that guy should have been grilled on that.
I didn't watch the show, but I'm sure that people
For them to sit there and say, oh, the last 2 weeks, Washington didn't look quite as good against lesser. Well, what? Did Georgia blow UAB out of the water 70-3? I don't think so.
I'm sure that the line would have been that Ohio State has 2 ranked wins, one being over number 9 Notre Dame and number 7 Penn State.
Yeah, okay. But you put Washington at 5. That's what doesn't make sense to me. But I complain about these guys every year. I complain about them, and that's what makes it fun. There's always a lot of wiggle room and arguments on both sides. But I just feel like the team that has the best win to this point and is undefeated probably shouldn't be number 5 in the pecking order at this point. But they know what we know. It'll shake itself out because Ohio State and Michigan have to play.
Yeah.
Washington's got to take care of its business. And I'll tell you what, the way Oregon looked this weekend against Utah, holy God, that makes that damn Washington win even better.
Yeah.
It really does, because Oregon looked, Utah is no joke at all. And Washington still has to play the Utes. It's all going to be fun, and I can't wait to watch it unfold. I'm just spoiled that, UC's been in the mix the last several years, and now nowhere on the radar.
Not sniffing.
Nope, not sniffing. And that's a shame. But first rankings out, and I still think in the end it'll be the Dogs. But my God, Ohio State does have some weapons. I mean, my God, they can just come at you in waves.
It's not quarterback,
right?
It's not a weapon. All he has to do though is throw it anywhere in the vicinity of Marvin Harrison Jr.
Correct.
And he makes him look good.
Correct. And that kid's got to be in the Heisman talk, along with Bo Nix and a bunch of them. Who knows who it'll be, but man, he's making a case. There's no doubt about it.
FC Cincinnati hosted their first playoff game this week, came out victorious. Of course, Luciano Acosta has a goal because that's what he does.
Yes, he does.
He's a wrecking ball of
and
goal scorer.
Before I could even get it on Apple TV, I think it was 2-0. It was just bang bang, and they end up winning 3-0. They go to New York Saturday night for Game 2 of this best of 3. I would look for them to polish it off. Nothing's a given, but I think it's pretty clear right now who the best team in this league is. That doesn't mean they'll win the cup, because anything can happen when you get to this one and done, when it's knockout round time, which it will be after this series. But I have nothing but positive thoughts about FC Cincinnati and their quest to bring a professional championship to Cincinnati, a major professional championship.
It makes me that much happier that Inter Miami didn't even make the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
After all of the strings that were pulled to bring Messi into the league, and they don't even make the playoffs, I wouldn't feel nearly as good about FC Cincinnati's chances if Messi was in the playoffs.
And when that move happened, it was bigger than Kelsey and Swift. I mean, it was ridiculous. All the pub and all the hype and like, seriously. And when he came to Cincinnati and tickets on the secondary market are going for this or that. And look, I'm not the biggest soccer guy out there. I didn't play. I love the fact that FC Cincinnati got it right and brought in some guys to run the organization that know what they're doing in MLS. And if you can figure out that MLS roster and how it works and the salary cap and not the salary, I mean, good luck. And they've got guys that can do that and have done a very good job of it, and who seem, if they're going to lose a guy, like they lost this season when they lost Brenner, but they had a guy ready to bring right in that just, boom, out the door goes this one, in the door comes help. I just feel like they're always a step or two ahead of the game. And I didn't feel that before. In these last couple of years, I felt that way. And they've built something really, really good. And not only good for this year. I mean, I just think that organization has staying power. As well as I do, the people who own that team have enough money to keep the front office people from traipsing off somewhere else. They'll be able to match whatever.
Right.
And there's someone that's got some pride to do that. They're gonna put the money there. And so I can't say enough good things about it. Great venue to watch a game, beautiful stadium. I wouldn't advise walking home sometimes from it. But other than that, they've got it right now.
Well, that brings us to state playoffs. What's going on with the teams that you've been watching?
Second round in Ohio. Okay, here's what you got. You got St. X and Moeller in Division I, which that game's at St. X. That'll be a war. I don't care. I know that is Lakota West Elder. Are you kidding me? Tom Bolden and Doug Ramsey going at it up there.
Should be good.
Princeton, I think, probably has the advantage on Hamilton and should win, but Hamilton's had a darn good season. You got to give that team all the credit in the world. And Milford with Tom Grippa at the helm, hosting Mason, and Mason with Kyle Kastner as head coach. They survived the game last week and head on to Milford, who's been very hot. Those are 4 good games in Division I, and now you're down to 8 teams in the region. You start with 16, and as I said last week, that round you'll get some stinkers in there. When you got 1 seed against 16, 2 fit, you're going to get some blowouts. That was last round. This round, it gets a lot tougher. Division II, Winton Woods still alive, going to play Withrow, a very good Withrow team at Withrow. Kings and Anderson, 2 teams traditionally just high-powered offenses. I give Anderson the edge, but I don't put anything past Kings. They've played some really, really good football, and I respect their coach. Harrison playing at Northmont in Division II. Division III, Baden, the number 1 seed. I think they're going to win state. I really do, barring a disaster. Division IV, McNick playing at Clinton Massey. That's going to be a war, a total war. McNick's tough, but so is Clinton Massey. Taft and Wyoming play. That's interesting. Indian Hill, Alter. So a lot of good football games in Ohio for round 2. We're getting down to it where, as I said, I don't think you're going to see many blowouts. There may be, but I don't think you're going to see many. In Kentucky, finally getting to the playoffs, and Chad's Lloyd Juggernaut hosting Fleming County. Chalk another one up for the Jugs in my book. And then right here down the hill from me, Bellevue at Ludlow. Ludlow, I went to this game a couple of weeks ago where they beat Holy Cross. And I knew it was a district championship. I didn't realize Ludlow's first district championship since 1975. That was before you were born.
It was. Yes.
Yes. That might have been about the time I was graduating high school. And I believe Ludlow won a state title that year. And then over in Indiana, Batesville playing in 3A, Milan in 1A, and East Central rolling on in 4A. And East Central plays a team from Greenwood. And you got to think about Wood. Greenwood, what do you think the nickname is for that team?
The Woodies.
You're very close. That's a good one. The Woodmen.
It was close.
Yeah, you were very close. So that's it. That's all I got. I'm going to go fill this glass up with some more Basil Hayden toast. And then I'll finish this and maybe have another.
You are something else.
Oh, I got to look at something, though. Okay. That sign back there, I didn't know it was there. I have no idea why it's there. Hopefully you can't read it.
Can't read it.
Thank God.
I'm on a smaller screen, so maybe those watching on bigger screens might be able to. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. You know what it says?
What's it say, George?
You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. I don't know where that came from.
Maybe it was your wife, George. Maybe it was your wife.
No one needs to see that.
Yeah, unbelievable.
No one needs to see that.
Candid moments with George Fogle, ladies and gentlemen.
Hilarious.
That's going to wrap it up for another episode of George in the Jungle. We'll be right back here next Tuesday night.
I got to ask you about next Tuesday.
What's going on?
I'm going to be in Lexington at a concert. Do we record early, or should I do it what do you want to do?
We'll figure it out off air.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Sorry to dump that on. I meant to say something earlier. I totally forgot, but you brought that up. I didn't
No
want
worries. We'll let you know.
I won't have food poisoning, I hope.
We will let you know what's happening for next Tuesday. But until then, for George Vogel, I am Aaron Smith. This was another episode of George in the Jungle. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.